The inevitable downfall of Ohio State football. Now, before you get all crazy on me, I'm not necessarily saying this. This is a series that I've had in my head long ago, well before the Michigan game. I'm hoping to do this with multiple teams, should it go well. So, give me in the comments below, after you watch the video, which one of these scenarios is most likely to happen? Will Ohio State have a downfall within the next 1 to 3 years? Will they have a downfall somewhere between year 4 and 7 from now? Will they have a downfall somewhere between years 8 and 15 from now, or will they never in our lifetime see a downfall? Also, important to know, a downfall in this scenario is relative to Ohio State standards, and it's not just 1 season or 2 seasons even. I would call a downfall for Ohio State standards something like going 8-4 one season, and then 9-3 the next, and then 9-3 again, and 10 and just where Michigan was during the Harbaugh years before this. I would call that a downfall for Ohio State compared to the standards that they've set at this point in time. So they're going to have higher expectations than most teams I'm going to present the case with in this series. I'm going to pin my answer in the comments below so you can check that out. I'll let you know what I actually think on the matter, which one of those 4 I think is going to happen. Before you go all wild and say, hey, it's impossible that Ohio State ever has a downfall, yeah, a lot of teams have said that over the years. My thing to you is never say never. Clemson last year went 9-3. They actually ended up having a pretty decent season compared to how they started it, but keep in mind that they played in the ACC, a relatively weak conference, one of the weaker conferences, and so that 9-3 season really isn't indicative of the type of team they had this year. I think they would have went like 7-5 in the SEC West or the Big Ten East in that scenario. Yeah, Florida State's gone through a heck of a downfall. Miami, Virginia Tech, I would even say Georgia Tech has gone through a downfall. It wasn't long ago that they were playing in ACC championship games very consistently against Clemson, and now all of a sudden they're nowhere to be found. TCU has had a downfall relative to what they were. West Virginia and Texas, those are the Big 12 teams. Obviously, Texas is the big one. The Big 10 teams outside of this year, and really outside of the whole Harbaugh era, I think he's gotten us past the whole downfall region compared to Michigan standards. Michigan is one of those teams. Nebraska, for sure, is one of those teams. They are not at the same glory that they were at long ago. The Pac-12, Washington and Stanford. Washington has not looked like they did when they had Chris Petersen. Stanford not like they have when they had Jim Harbaugh. Those two teams finished next to last and last in the Pac-12 North this past season. Southern Cal has had a huge downfall. Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush days are long gone. The SEC, the clear one is Tennessee. Man, they've had such a tumultuous time. Even this year seems like a good season for them, and it really wasn't a very great season for Tennessee, honestly. It's just the new standards that they've had to come up with. Florida looks to be a little shaky as of late. They don't look like their caliber team that they have been over the years. Alabama pre-Saban, a lot of people kind of forget that. I mean, Saban was the savior for a particular reason. Alabama wasn't at the standards and the glorified days that they were in the past. Arkansas, post Darren McFadden and Ryan Mallett and some of those guys, they have not looked the same until this past season. Auburn and LSU are 2 of those other teams that have had a lot of success in the past. So a lot of these teams have come through some kind of downfall or are still in the midst of the downfall. Some of them have been in huge downfalls. I highlighted those teams. Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech, Texas, Nebraska, Southern Cal, and Tennessee. Those are all some blue bloods in that list and some really good football teams in that list that are their fans are not seeing the product on the field that they want to see. 3 reasons why it could happen against Ohio State. And I don't want this video to be negative. Yes, I'm a Michigan fan, but again, I was going to do this series. It's been in my mind for a long time. In fact, to be honest with you guys, it was much harder to come up with 3 reasons why they might have a downfall than it would be for 10 to 15 reasons that I could easily come up with as to why they would not have a downfall. So keep that in mind as well. I'm not actually saying this. I'm just saying, you never say never. Never say never, like I just showed a list of teams that have gone through some tumultuous times. Never say never is what I would say. Number 1 reason, and I'm not putting these in any particular order, Ryan Day might not be Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. Those are obviously huge shoes to fill. Now, he does have a better winning percentage right now than Jim Tressel had. Tressel was 94-22 overall, .810 winning percentage. He started just 7-5 in 2001 though. And Ryan Day, comparatively, has a 30-4 overall record, .882 winning percentage. So Ryan Day has done better than Jim Tressel, but as we know, the situation that Jim Tressel got handed over to him is a lot different than what Ryan Day has had handed over to him. So we'll see how that continues to progress. Can Ryan Day do all the things that you have to do as a coach? He obviously brought in Knowles as the defensive coordinator out of Oklahoma State. He's made those changes early on. He even made a change during the season with his defensive coordinator. He's going to have to make a lot of adjustments. He's going to have to continue to recruit well, and he's going to have to learn how to coach both sides of the football. The defense did not look up to par this season. Obviously, he's an offensive mastermind, but we had that in Rick Rodriguez at Michigan. Offensive masterminds don't get everything done. You also got to play two sides of the football. So we'll see how Ryan Day does. But my thinking is I'm still waiting to see. I don't want to make any judgment and look stupid too soon. But I think Ohio State's going to have a hard time finding back-to-back great coaches. Maybe they'll have a great in Jim Tressel, great in Urban Meyer, or really great in Urban Meyer, and then pretty good in Ryan Day. That's more realistic in my opinion. Obviously, the bigger thing is, you know that Ryan Day is 1-1 versus Michigan. That's off to a bad start. Jim Tressel was 8-1 versus Michigan, with his only loss being in 2003, and Urban Meyer was 7-0 versus Michigan. So if you're talking versus Michigan, Ryan Day's obviously off to a bad start. Has plenty of years, hopefully, for y'all's sake, to make that up and to get along the standards of Tressel and Meyer. But so far, it's on the wrong trajectory, and Michigan's on the right trajectory in that area. You also had John Cooper, who, of course, was 2-10-1 versus Michigan. I don't know how this new DC is going to do. Personally, my personal opinion on it, I know a lot of Ohio State fans like the hire. I'm not as big on the hire. I just think that the Big 12 has a lot of messes up the offensive side of the football, especially with Oklahoma being down this season, and I don't know how good Knowles actually is in that regard. Now, I do know he's probably a very smart guy. He went to Cornell, played for Cornell. He also coached at Duke, so he's been at some brainiac colleges. We'll see if he can bring the analytics and the brain power to get the job done there, but I don't know on him. I don't know if it's a good hire or not. My personal thought is I don't think it is. I don't know if we're necessarily going to be able to tell either. There's so much talent on that side of the football, and it's going to be more experienced talent for Ohio State next year, that it's going to be difficult to tell early on during his tenure. Reason number two that I'd like to say is, obviously, especially as a Michigan fan, their competition is getting better. And when your competition gets better, you start to lose some games that you cannot afford to lose. You know, the margin for error with a 4-team college playoff system right now is very, very slim. You can't lose 2 games. So you got Michigan, and you have a lot of continuity. That's what we're going to talk about. A lot of continuity, a lot of tenure with these coaches. And so far, Michigan isn't losing guys. We might start. Josh Gaddis went to go to interview for Virginia. He didn't get the job. We might start to lose some guys, but for now, we're not losing guys. I personally, for Michigan, let's start with Michigan. I don't think this was a fluke year for Michigan. I really don't. I think Josh Gaddis and Jim Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh wants to pound the rock and play tough-nosed football. Josh Gaddis wants to be creative and have speed and space. They could not figure it out between the two of them at first. You know, we tried Jim Harbaugh's system, we tried Josh Gaddis' system, and finally we meshed the two together, and I think they found an answer, and they figured out the kind of personnel that they need for each kind of play. Man, they've really figured it out on that side of the football, and so I don't think it's a fluke. You also have Mike McDonald. I've been saying it for years. We got to get rid of Don Brown. I think they figured out that side of the football. So that's Michigan. Michigan State, they're not to the standards that they were in 2015 when they made the playoffs, but they are a 10-2 football team this year. Mel Tucker just signed a 10-year, $95 million contract, so whatever you think about him, the fact of the matter is they're very much invested in him, in which case a lot of the players are going to be invested in him. A lot of people are going to feel more comfortable to sign with Michigan State. Same thing with Penn State. James Franklin, 10-year deal as well. Harbaugh's already been at Michigan for 7 years. You look at the West, Paul Chryst just finished year 7 with Wisconsin. Kirk Ferentz has been at Iowa since 1999. Jeff Brom finished year 5 at Purdue. PJ Fleck finished year 5 at Minnesota, and Scott Frost finished year 4 at Nebraska. I also think that Nebraska, with the way they lost games and everything this season, they went 3-9, but I believe that he's still going to be there for a little while, especially if he can really shape it up next year and at least go like 7-5. I think his tenure is going to continue to run. Big Ten's starting to get some guys where they're invested in these people, which is going to make it difficult, more and more difficult, because these teams are going to start facing you more and more each year, and they're going to learn more and more about your tendencies and all that good stuff. And Ryan Day is continuously, I don't think he's going to the Bears, obviously. I know most of you don't, but he's continuously going to get offers to go elsewhere for sure, 100%. So we'll see how long he even stays there. Continuity could be an issue. The competition getting better over and over again. against Ohio State could be an issue. In 2022, they play Notre Dame out of conference. 2023, Notre Dame again. 2024, Washington, a Washington team that could be better come that time. 2025, Washington and Texas, although I think Texas might be a scratch in that game when they're joining the SEC. Seems like they might scratch that game. A lot of money would be made off that game, so we'll see, but I could see it coming off the schedule. Those teams don't necessarily have a lot of continuity. In fact, most of them don't, but they do have a lot of talent. They're not an easy out-of-conference opponent by any means, and especially if Washington and Texas get better over the years, they'll be even harder. Again, very little margin for error in college football, and once you start to lose, man, it's like dominoes. Once you start to lose, it's like dominoes, and things start to go downhill, and players start blaming players, and coaches start blaming players, and players start blaming coaches, and just everything goes downhill. So you never know when something like that could happen, and as your competition's getting better and more chemistry and they have a lot of tenure and stuff, they're going upward, you could be going downward. And finally, reason number 3, Clemson. Yes, Clemson. I would put Clemson and Ohio State over the last 5 to 7 years on the same exact title. Man, they played each other, 4 times I think it is in those years. And so Clemson is very eerily similar to Ohio State. Again, they were in the ACC this season, so it helped them out a good bit, but they ended up 9-3, and they did not look good. They were not a very good 9-3 football team. They were down the stretch, but before then, they had a lot of games that were very, very close against teams that they should not be close to. And look at what has happened to Clemson this past year alone. They've lost, even since the last game of the season, they've lost their defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, who was obviously a huge piece of that defense. That Clemson defense, to me, is the best defense in the country this season, even better than Georgia's, Alabama's, Michigan's, anybody's. I think they were the best. We just didn't know it because they weren't winning as many football games because their offense was anemic. He went to Oklahoma. They lost their offensive coordinator, Tony Elliott. He went to Virginia, and they lost their athletic director, Dan Radakovich. He went to Miami. They lost 3-star wide receiver Frank Ladson. He transferred. They lost Aju. He transferred. He's a 3-star. They lost 3-star quarterback Tyson. I won't pronounce his last name, but it's on the screen right now. That's DJ's backup. And they lost 3-star running back Lynn J. Dixon to West Virginia. And a lot of these guys, yeah, they're 3-stars, but man, they really played above their potential. I live out here in South Carolina. I've seen these guys play. They're more like 4-stars at this point. They've been coached very well, and you don't want to lose them. You don't want to lose them. It's a good problem to have when you're losing guys like these. It is, because it means that your team has so much depth and is so talented that these guys are having to transfer out elsewhere. It is a good problem to have. The issue is if some of the guys that they were starting over those guys don't pan out or they get injured or whatever, you start to lose that depth. You start to lose that continuity. We'll say that again. You start to lose those things and your team just isn't at the same level. It's going to be very interesting to see where Clemson ends up. The biggest point I want to make is not everybody's Alabama, guys. Alabama is an anomaly. The way that they go through coaches and continue to just reload. People use that stuff with Ohio State and Clemson, and I see that they are reloading. Yes, they're reloading, but they're not reloading at the Alabama level. Alabama is they're winning championships. They're not just getting to playoffs year in and year out. You see what I'm saying? They're over and over again since Nick Saban has been there winning championships. So they're getting there and getting over the hump. They're able to adjust, and they've lost so many guys from their coaching staff particularly. That's almost more impressive than the players that they've lost. The amount of coaches that have gone out and gone elsewhere and gone to bigger and better pastures in their opinion. The way that Alabama has just been able to do that is unprecedented. They are a dynasty, and not everybody is Alabama. Let's make that clear. There's also recruits that Clemson has lost. They lost 5-star cornerback Dalen Everett. He left after the Venables departure. 4-star safety Keon Sabb. He's rumored to go to Michigan. I sure hope that's the case. Haven't really looked into that much further past first initially reading that. Edge rusher Jahad Campbell. He's a 4-star. He also left. And Ohio State, you've had your issues with those kind of guys leaving out. 5-star quarterback Quinn Ewers, 3-star quarterback Jack Miller, so 2 straight quarterbacks. I think those were, correct me if I'm wrong, I think those were number 2 and 3 quarterbacks on your team this past season. So what if CJ Stroud had gotten hurt with these guys gone, you know? You lost a 4-star offensive tackle in August, Ryan Jacoby, and a 4-star safety, Amir Reap, in November. Nothing new. Again, it happens all the time, but at Clemson this season, as soon as DJ Uiagalelei struggled this year, everybody struggled for Clemson. The whole team struggled. And now all of a sudden, because of transfers, they've lost a lot of quarterback transfers, just like Ohio State did this past season. They've lost a lot of transfers in general. All of a sudden, that depth wasn't there, and they only could play DJ Uiagalelei. A lot of people were like, why are we not playing somebody else? Because they didn't have anybody else. Because once that talent is there, and you can't blame Ewers or whatever, however you say his last name, you can't blame him for leaving. C.J. Stroud is the guy. He's young. He's going to be there for the foreseeable future. So he's got to go elsewhere and look for a better opportunity. And he thinks that better opportunity is Texas. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. Not everybody's Alabama. I could see Ohio State having down years over time. We're going to find out. My personal opinion, you're going to have to see in the comments below. I told you, I'm not giving that out right now. Thank you for watching. If you're an Ohio State fan, I'm not being negative on you. In fact, here's a playlist of the whole downfall of Michigan football that I did last season. Looks like bad timing now as we're doing pretty well. But here, if you want to watch me talk bad about Michigan, here it is. Take care. Have a good one, guys. God bless you.